In this video, I'm going to show hidden camera footage of how I made a hot girl cheat on her boyfriend within 10 minutes. And this is something that is shockingly common. Of the last 5 women that I hooked up with, 3, well, one turned out she was married. I found out the day after. Another one turned out she had a boyfriend. And then this one also had a boyfriend. And it's crazy how easy it is for women to cheat when they go out on a girls' night or for a birthday party or whatever. They will cheat without a second thought. Obviously not all of them, but it's something that you need to be aware of, because this girl, she told me during the interaction that she was planning on marrying the guy that she's dating, and this was after we had made out. And this girl also said that he was her high school sweetheart. That's just crazy to me, that within 10 minutes, you're, throwing that away. And maybe she's done it many times, but that's just crazy how nonchalant she was about it. So you're gonna learn some things about game. You're gonna learn some things about how to move things forward, how to create a man-to-woman interaction that has sexual tension, and how to, capitalize on your opportunities. But you're also going to kind of be made aware of just how crazy it is out there in terms of how easily a lot of women will cheat. So, first of all, I'm gonna show some of the footage from the interaction. We did not get the audio, but we got video of not only the approach, making out, and even pulling her. So we got footage of every single thing, and I'll be playing it and explaining what's happening. So this girl leaves the club by herself. Now, that's ideal, because that's something that the majority of women, especially attractive women, are gonna be in groups. You're gonna have to learn how to deal with group dynamics. But you're gonna get opportunities where a girl is by herself. And in this case, it turned out her friend was already hooking up with someone. Her friend had already gotten pulled, her single friend, who was much less attractive than her, as it tends to be. And so her friend's hooking up with a guy, and now she's leaving on her own and, in a way left out. And so it's an ideal opportunity to go talk to her because she's bored. And so I approach, and I don't remember the exact opening line I said, but I believed I got this one my friend was using, which goes something along the lines of, "Hey, I saw you walking by, and I would have regretted it if I didn't at least say hello," which is kind of I'd say a somewhat better version of the classic, "Hey, I thought you were cute and I had to say hi." The very basic template that we've all heard, which is fine, but this is a little bit more unique, and it has a little bit more tension within it, right? And it has a little bit of vulnerability in it, because you're saying you would have regretted it. You're kind of implying that, it's not an easy thing to do, that you're putting yourself on the line. And so now, if you reject me, you're a huge bitch. It's not, you're not saying that, but there's an element of it being far more vulnerable and unique. So I like that opener. I believe that's what I used. And then we start talking. She's instantly attracted. And I know this because her body language. I know this because she's holding very strong eye contact. I know this because she's smiling. And when I touch her, she's super comfortable with it and leans in. This is called a green light. Whenever you're physical, you're gonna either get a green light, yellow light, or red light. A red light means she pulls away or says, pulls your arm off or whatever. That obviously means you need to stop and, be patient. If she gives you a yellow light, that's her just being neutral. So she doesn't lean in, she doesn't reciprocate, but she doesn't lean away. In that case, you also don't want to continue, or definitely you don't want to escalate more, right? So you don't want to keep it going. You want to just pull back a bit. And then a green light is when she leans in, touches you back, etc. And so physical escalation on the one hand is useful because, well, you have to do it at some point. And it's going to be awkward if you wait the entire interaction until you're in each other's bedroom, then you finally escalate. There's so much pressure built up. It's probably going to be very awkward for both you and her. But if you're already being physical right from the beginning, it's setting that premise, and it's making both you and her comfortable with that idea, right? And it becomes much more natural for you to continue escalating in the future. So it helps you deal with your own anxiety about escalation that you may have. So it's a really good thing to do, specifically in night game far more than in day game. In day game, being too touchy, too physical, can kind of come across as weird and uncalibrated. It still can be done, but just be aware there's definitely a difference. But when you're in night game, especially inside a loud club, you kind of have to be physical, because if you're not physical at all, if you're just like keeping 6 feet for coronavirus or whatever between you and her, well, what's going to happen is she's barely even going to feel your presence, because there's so many other forms of stimulation. So at the very least, you want to be getting in close proximity and finding out quickly if she's receptive to physicality. Because if she is, there's a good chance that it's on, that you can lead, that you can move things forward, that you might be able to take her home later. And if she gives you nothing when you physically escalate, then okay, this is less likely to be something that's going to go anywhere. So that's very useful. So I get that green light, smiling, laughing, strong eye contact, and there's also just a feminine energy. This is something you pick up, but when women are giving you an emotionally feminine energy, it's kind of the giggly energy. Anime eyes is one of the old school terms. When they give you that energy, then it's pretty much on. And that's something that you'll learn to notice as you do more and more approaches. That's something you'll just unconsciously become aware of. So I take her to a bar. We go to this bar, and then we start talking about, where she's from. She's from a small rural town, which, funny enough, a lot of guys think, all right, you got to go to a small town. You got to go to the Philippines. You got to go somewhere where there isn't so much competition, and then she won't cheat. In my experience, a lot of the women who I've seen cheat tend to be girls who are from a small town and they are traveling, because those girls are missing out on all those experiences. They kind of feel cooped up. They have less options. And when they go to a big city, it just becomes so easy to get sucked in that and sucked into the excitement. And they're actually, in some cases, it seems to be the most likely to cheat rather than the least likely. So something to be aware of there. So I'm making strong eye contact. I'm letting her do more of the talking than I do, because if you do that with the right kind of eye contact, it builds a lot of sexual tension. It creates this feeling of butterflies, this feeling of like a little bit of pressure, and not in a like I'm judging her way, but a like I'm intensely engaged and also kind of turned on, just like looking at her in a way where I'm feeling the attraction, I'm feeling the sexual polarity, the magnetism between, masculine and feminine energy. And when you do that, and when you are thinking in a kind of sexual way, it'll just build sexual tension on its own. There's been scientific studies that have shown that when people just make strong, sensual eye contact for, I believe it was 4 minutes straight, they did an experiment where the people reported feeling deep love and intimacy. But the most interesting part is 2 of the people from that study actually ended up getting married after making that intimate eye contact for 4 minutes. So that's something that's very powerful, very underrated. It's very basic. We all know about it. We've all heard about it, but most people just don't implement it. It's not exciting. It's not something that, makes a viral video title because it's one of the fundamentals and people want to hear the advanced, fancy PUA trickery, right? The Octoberman sequence. So I start making out with her, and then I find out her logistics. So I find out where she's staying. She's staying nearby. Her friend is with another guy at another hotel, at the guy's hotel. So I know the logistics are perfect, and then I start bringing up the idea of going back to her place. And in this case, I didn't really make a specific reason. Sometimes it's a good idea to do that, to say, let's play a drinking game, or let's play hookah, or there was this girl I pulled recently where I said, let's play Cards Against Humanity. It's not even a 2-player game. It didn't make sense, but it worked. And obviously we didn't end up playing the game, but just having some excuse makes it less pressury, right? It creates less the sense that like you're gonna expect sex, right? You want it to be more low key. And women, obviously the feeling of being pressured is very annoying to them, and you never want to create that. You want to avoid that throughout the interaction, and escalate in a way that she can relate to, that's empathetic. I know that doesn't sound like super alpha, but that's the truth. That's what actually works. She's down for that, and then she tells me she has a boyfriend. We've already made out. So at this point, Do I really? I mean, look, I'm not, if a girl says she has a boyfriend, I'll just say have a good night usually. But she already cheated. So at that point, I don't really care. I don't really feel, I mean, to be honest, I don't think I'm the one doing anything wrong because she's the one who is cheating, right? She's the one who's breaking her commitment, not me. I don't know the guy. So I don't recommend like specifically going after women who have boyfriends, but at this point it didn't matter. It was already pretty much, we'd already made out. She'd already cheated. So I didn't see the point in just saying, oh, well, you better be faithful to him. So then we start walking down the hallway to get an Uber to the hotel. And as we're doing that, I'm saying some very explicitly sexual things. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm basically telling her how I'm going to give her multiple orgasms, like talking about BDSM, talking about Tantra, which is, these are things that I've done research into, that I know about. And sexual authority is definitely a great tool to use. Like being able to talk about sexual topics in a way that's very confident, that's dominant, and in a way where you sound like you know what you're talking about it can make the interaction very sexual, and it can make it basically like very obvious that the two of you are going to hook up. It's also something that you don't need to do, because when I was new to cold approach, when I was new to game, I didn't do that for the first 3 years at all. I was rarely even super direct. I might make one comment about how I thought she was hot, and that was it. So that's not something that you have to do. It's something that can backfire if you do it in a way that just comes across as pushy or needy, or like you're, uncomfortable talking about it. So you don't have to talk about sex. You can really rely on your vibe, which is something as men that is very amorphous to us. It's very hard to understand at first, but it's something that you can absolutely do. And if you want to learn more about how to have that vibe, I have an entire module in my online course, God Mode, that talks about how to cultivate that sexual magnetism in your interactions, where there's that feeling of sexual tension that's just building more and more without having to say anything. And I get into the very specific details of how to do that. And on top of that, I show over 5 hours of in-field examples of what that looks like. So I show complete polls from opening to taking the girl home. And one is a fitness model, one is just a hot Instagram model. I doubt she makes a huge living from Instagram, but she calls herself that at least, and she was hot. So these are very attractive women, and I'm showing how to do that. I'm showing what it looks like. It's really not a requirement. I don't want you to get a lot of guys like, oh, I need to sexualize, and we're so logical that we think, okay, so I have to say a sexual thing. That's something that you can do, but don't get fixated on that, right? If you need that to pull, you're probably not pulling. If you can't pull without doing that, then you're probably not gonna pull at all. So then I take her home, and it ends up being very simple from there. It ends up being, there's no LMR or anything of that nature. And that's how I made a girl cheat on her boyfriend in 10 minutes. By 10 minutes, I mean the making out was already cheating, just to be clear. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's something you have to be aware of. It's kind of a warning of what happens when you're in a scarcity mindset. Because I would bet the guy is a nice guy. He might be good looking. He might not be. Who knows? But he's a guy that, got locked in to his high school sweetheart and got really committed to her. And on some level, when we live in a world where, marriage isn't that serious, we're not that religious, there's going to be a part of everyone's brain, men and women, where they're thinking maybe there's something better out there, better sexual experiences or better connection, and they're looking for any excuse to cheat, to just see what might happen. And it's something that it's probably a majority, like 80%, I would guess, of people cheat in relationships. There's surveys that say the numbers are lower, but how are you going to get a real number from surveying people, right? It's always going to be biased. So I would guess it's something like 80% of people cheat based on my experience. And that's something that you have to be aware of. And that's why it's important not to be, to choose from a lot of options, to have an abundance before you choose. Because I guarantee this guy had a scarcity mindset with women. I'm guarantee that he was starting to come across needy, controlling. He knew he was worried about her cheating. And that just makes it that much more likely that she's going to cheat. Or at the very least, he didn't choose her from enough options to be able to choose someone who's genuinely trustworthy. Because the red flags are always there, but if you're not able to get women whenever you want and you have a hot girl who you're hooking up with, you start rationalizing all the reasons she is a good partner, right? You get the rose-colored goggles. It's a very real thing. And you just don't notice all the red flags. But if you're someone who does have a lot of options, that doesn't happen, at least not to nearly the same extent. So that's something to be aware of. And I thought this video, it's new infield, so I wanted to share it for that reason, showing myself pulling an attractive girl, making out, etc., to show that I'm still going out, approaching, getting results. And I'm going to be posting a lot more infield in the near future. But it's also kind of a PSA. It's something to be aware of. You need to choose the women that you get into a long-term relationship with very carefully. You need a very strong vetting process for who you're going to get into a long-term relationship with, because if you don't, you end up being the guy who gets cheated on, then divorced, then loses half his money, and then ends up going to the red pill rage and thinks all women are trash. And to your perspective, it makes a lot of sense, but it's because you didn't choose from enough options. It's because you just were so excited that a attractive girl, maybe not even an attractive one, but a girl liked you, she wanted to be your girlfriend, and you just got sucked in, and then you end up getting screwed over because you were in a scarcity mindset the whole time, and that neediness just started to kind of leak more and more. She starts to resent you and mistreat you, and it's important to be aware of how common that is. Now, if you watch this video and you think, that's cool, like, well, I don't necessarily want to make girls cheat, but that's cool that you can just approach a hot girl, make out with her within 10 minutes, take her home shortly after. That's the kind of lifestyle that I'd like to have, where my life is an adventure, where it feels like I'm the main character in a movie, as opposed to watching other people's lives, right? As opposed to watching other people have an exciting life, which ironically, if you're just watching this and you're not going out and creating these kinds of experiences yourself, not pulling girls, hooking up, having a dating life of abundance, then that's an example of that mindset. That's an example of being voyeuristic and watching other people live an exciting life while not doing so yourself. And if you want to have the kind of dating life that most men only fantasize about, the best way to make that shift, to make that change quickly and as easily as possible is with in-person coaching. Because when you meet me in person, you're going to have the accountability, you're going to have the emotional leverage, you're going to have the skin in the game to push yourself 1,000 times more than you ever have in your life. It is very common for someone to do more approaches during a 3-day boot camp with me than they have in their entire life. One of my clients last weekend, he said he had done about 17 approaches in his entire life. And during the boot camp, in one day, he did over 80. So that's 4 times his entire life in one of the 3 days. You won't be watching from the sidelines and wondering what it would be like if you were out there approaching women, putting yourself out there, learning this skill set, learning how to lead, how to make things happen. When you do that, you're no longer on the sidelines looking in. There's a reason why I have video testimonials of guys losing their virginity, more than one, by the way, or guys who went from no results to sleeping with over 25 women in a year, or guys who went from a long dry spell to finally meeting their girlfriend within a couple months of taking a boot camp. I'll have a link below to a couple dozen of my video testimonials to show that these results are real. But a boot camp is the only way to make a year's worth of progress, sometimes even more than that, in just one weekend. Because not only will you do more approaches than you ever thought possible, you're also going to be getting constant feedback, and the blind spots that you didn't know were causing you to get rejected will quickly be fixed. It might be something about the way you hold eye contact. I had one client who his eyes would always be way too wide, and it made girls feel nervous around him. And we practiced that. We drilled getting him to just hold eye contact. I know it sounds like such a simple thing, but just going over that and helping him break that habit helped that client lose his virginity within 2 weeks of the boot camp. It might also be that you speak to women with a kind of submissive vocal tonality without even being aware of it. but I'll film your approaches, show you the footage, and when you hear that your voice goes up by an entire octave when you're talking to women, and that you start speaking with a seeking rapport tonality, like you really want her to like you. Oh, hey, how's it going? When you see and hear that you do that, you will never do it again. That problem will be fixed, and your results will drastically improve just from that small little adjustment. So if you want to learn more about my in-person coaching, click the link below.